Hello there. It's another episode of the CyberDudes podcast. I am still Robin Thornton and I'm joined by Omar Sangarima. As per usual, how are you doing, Omar?
Top of the morning to you, sir. Doing great. How about you?
See, breaking out your Irish roots there.
Jose hit you with the T at the end of his. He had a note to tell himself to talk about it. So I think we're gonna make that a thing.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. I've had a productive weekend. Been replacing very old, crappy drawer slides in the kitchen with some new fancy soft close stuff. So
Ooh.
that was it. Took me. I'll tell you what though, I did not think that was going to be so for just two drawers. Did not think that was going to be a 3 hour job. I swear the tagline for carpentry must be much harder than it looks.
No, it's carpenters. That's why Jesus was a carpenter, right? It took his divine handiwork there. My brother-in-law is a carpenter, and I'm always amazed at the stuff that he busts out and the projects he tell me about from time to time. I'm just like, it's the dark
Mm.
arts, bro. I don't got the patience for it.
But like I say, it was my table saw bench, which I did finish yesterday
Nice.
as well. Well,
Sure.
mostly it's got a little couple of bits, but it was kind of a bit wonky, and it's where it's just to do with well, partly cuts that are just ever so slightly out of alignment. But I find that's very, very difficult to get everything absolutely, unless you're using machine like actual precision machinery to do all of that. And then yeah, and just the way that your timber just gradually changes and just moves things out of alignment.
Listen,
Very,
I didn't
very
know we were gonna get philosophical talking about our timber gradually changing over the years. This is a family show. If we could keep it PG, please. All right. I want
I
to
don't
be
know
able to.
where you're thinking of going with that.
Hey,
Anyway,
hey.
moving on. Okay, well, aside from the news, we also have a longer form episode for you today. We have an interview with one of Omar's contacts and colleagues from the freelance world, Jose Toledo. Tell us a little bit about Jose. Well, if you would.
Jose is another one of those aliens out of the Air Force, and I'll leave it at that. Right,
If I
my
am a
Joe
Roswell.
Rogan, friends are gonna eat that up, as well as maybe some of the Blink 182 fans in the audience. Aliens are real. Aliens exist. He's they produce some pretty amazing signals intelligence folks, some great hackers, some great infosec people. So that's one aspect. He's a great teacher. That's the side gig that we both got linked up on, and just seeing
Mhm.
him break down big, hard, chunky concepts into bite-sized morsels for getting people really. A lot of people talk about trying to transition people into cyber and being
Mhm.
a gate buster, but I think Jose is one of those guys that actually walks the talk. So it's a privilege to be able to support him in that endeavor. And as an added bonus, he just happens to be a really cool guy. So,
Yeah, it was my first time meeting him, and yeah, definitely the kind of guy you want to have a beer with.
absolutely.
We will be having the discussion we had. So slightly later on, you will see Omar, not Omar. Well,
Listen,
we did. You did talk about this. We had the conversation. Jose will be opining
we don't all
on
look alike, all right? Like,
no.
cut it out, please. For God's sakes. All right, there's some variation in the
It's
background.
full and names, dude. Just yeah. Two syllables as well. Jose will be talking to us about his trajectory into a path into cybersecurity from the Air Force, and also discussing things like how to get the most out of people in the cyber realm, and actually even just in the kind of white collar office kind of world, really. But yeah, more all of that coming up later. But first, shall we get into the news, Omar?
Let's do it.
Last week. Yep.
Let's
Go
do it.
fire
So
away.
First one is a juicy one, and we're not ones to shy away from controversial topics. So let's just dive
No,
into
never.
secret phone surveillance.
We don't like controversy.
Oh no, please take my eyes, but not controversy. Secret phone surveillance tech was likely deployed at the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Story by Wired, our good friends there. They're probably one of the sources where I get closest to considering doing a subscription, and then I remember all information should be free, and I'm a pirate at heart, so bugger off with that stuff. I see another Britishism there, but
Like it, love it.
Yeah, and this really brought to the forefront by another friend to the podcast. They might not know it yet, but they are deep in our hearts. The Electronic Frontier Foundation ran essentially not a sting operation, but they did the investigation of going, hey, let's take a look. And lo and behold, there were some dummy Wi-Fi posts, which is your first step in trying to gain an interdict person in the middle message, if you were, or a person in the middle attacks, right? Of this type of nature. All you have to really do is set up a dummy Wi-Fi point that you control, that you want to have be your listening post, and off you go. It was a politically fraught time, and there's one of the things that I do like how Wired handled this story was there's a lot of potential who and why. There's not pointing at any, oh, it must be the Republicans. No, like this is a controversial story, not because we're going to go party line, because, I can think of off the top like 5 or 10 different groups that would like to do this at this sort of gathering, especially considering that at the time there was a lot of Gaza protests going on as well. So you add another lovely set of potential players to the board that are really good at listening into people's messages. Shout out to our friends in Mossad and Unit 8200. So there's a bunch of different folks. Hey, listen, I want to be friends. All right, this Omar has no.
We don't want to be enemies, at least.
That's 100%, right? This Omar is cool with him. All right, I'll say this. So, but it's just goes to show you, right, Robin? Don't be jumping on to Wi-Fi that you don't 100% know where it came from.
I think this speaks to an awful lot too. Probably a lack of clear governance and organization from an IT perspective within not only the DNC but the RNC as well.
Yeah.
On the grounds that they just seemed like a bit of a sprawl, and for it being so, all right, yes, they're not explicitly like government, they are a group that runs for office, but they really should have similar levels of security and guardrails around all of this stuff, because even when either party is not in the White House, there's still a significant number of the people who are members of either convention or convention/committee have a lot of access to highly sensitive information on the basis of whether they be a sitting senator, congressman, whatever it may be. And it's that standard thing of like, I'll have my work email address, and then I also have my other work email address, and then there's relevance between the two, and then I notice seeing things from one to the other, and it's like, oh, well, actually, this information shouldn't leave the walls of this particular work organization, but it's still information that I am custodian of, and then it gets all of those kind of rules. And when you're sending stuff from more secure environment to less secure environment, then, well, basically all of the good work that has been done in the more secure environment is moot, because now that information is not protected by those guardrails that are there. And I'm not saying that the government is perfect with this sort of stuff either, but at least with an agency like CISA setting the agenda, there is much more of a, I guess, party line.
Sure. Nice.
that's
Nice.
being set. But this has been happening for nearly a decade now, because we had the whole. I mean, it happened back in 2016 as well. Anyway, this is like twice that
Yes.
this thing has happened at this kind of a level. And obviously you've got the whole sort of Hillary emails thing and all that kind of thing as well, which wasn't. I mean, that was something done not in the right way. I don't think there wasn't willful deception there, but it was a this is how not to do IT.
It's really just the concept of supply chain attacks or leveraging a third party to get back at what a real target would be. And my main takeaway is, hide your phone,
Hide your wife.
hide your watch, hide your phone, hide your watch. They hacking everybody. All right. This is just anywhere you go. If you potentially are even tangentially associated with information that could be a target, you're gonna get got. You might not think yourself, as you said, or what are they gonna come at me for? But you can't let your guard down. And please, please don't jump onto Wi-Fi that you don't know the source of. That's just basic hygiene 101 there. So tie that one off and head off to our good friends, another Chinese APT group, Advanced Persistent Threat Group, is ransacking Japan's secrets. This one coming to us from Dark Reading, another great source of cyber news. I like the name. It's not necessarily a typhoon. Mirror Face is a very, for some reason it's very Squid Gamesy to me. I know I'm mixing my Korea with my Japan and my China. I'd like to say officially sorry for that, but Mirror Face just sounds to me like one of those guards in Squid Game. It's and a surprise to nobody. You have a Chinese APT group that is targeting its neighbors, and also shocker, targeting its neighbors that usually side on the other side of the table from anywhere that China seems to be geopolitically.
Mm-hmm.
And this one's I really picked this one because I knew you'd be jumping all over it. Phishing is the main threat vector for how they leverage this. That seems to always rear its ugly head everywhere.
Well, we'll get into that in a bit, because
Sure.
I have something on that topic.
Yep. And listen, since 2019, Mirrorface has been going bananas and crafting well-crafted spear-phishing campaigns. So that tells me they know what they want. They go out and get it. They target it at very specific targets that they know are going to give them increased access to beautiful information that they want to get their grubby hands on. And away we go. I think this is just a geopolitical new normal.
Also, there was you brought up a VW story as well, did you not?
Oh, yes. Well, this is kind of a bonus, I think, here. VW, and what's crazy to me is that VW, because it's one of those brands that owns a ton of other brands. There's been a lot of consolidation in the car market since it almost fell off a cliff a few years ago.
They already had a lot of brands then.
And then
like they already owned Audi. They already
Yes.
owned obviously VW, because that is what they are. They what else did they have? They still have Lamborghini.
Yes. Things you don't
Yeah,
think of
the bunch.
unless you dig a little bit. But yeah, they went in and snapped up a bunch of distressed assets, as any corporate daddy will do when given the opportunity. But
Seat is in there as well, which doesn't surprise me at all.
Of course not. But what is sad? No, it's not another diesel scandal or emissions brouhaha, but there is a variable metric shit ton is the official designation, my friend, of geolocation data based on where the hell your car likes to ping back to. And yes, if you don't quite get your head around the fact that your car, any really modern car, is now a computer that also pings back to whatever the hell you allow it to, unless you specifically shut it all down and periodically shut it down, because when they send updates, you have to do that shit all over again. I'm getting heated because I'm very glad I drive an 09 Honda CRV, that computer base. I don't even think it can run Doom. All right, and you can run Doom on everything, but this treasure trove of data, not only was it being sort of underhandedly collected, really not on Front Street telling its folks, hey, we're getting this for you. That's the rule number one that they broke. Number two, they put it in a pretty easily gettable database that researchers as well as nefarious parties are going, ooh, what is this? So there you have it, VW, egg on the face again. You have a metric ton of geolocation data on your drivers. Thanks.
There was a different story that I saw that kind of made me think of what I'm about to say. This has brought it up again, in that whenever you get this kind of thing where like company's been doing really big bad thing. Oh no, it was the Apple thing with Siri and the listening into stuff, and the rather paltry $95 million
which is what, like 2 cents per person? Like, thanks.
$20 per device, which actually, given the rate that people turn over iPhones and iPads, actually, and for the time frame that covers, some people could be in for probably like $160 worth of compensation, to be fair. So
my privacy's worth a good night out of food. That's great. That's all.
It's better than a kick in the teeth. It's not great, but it's better than a kick in the teeth. Anyway, so but what it reminded me of was, or like the thought that it spurred was like, surely, like, I mean, I'm sure that there are situations where these kinds of initiatives do sit at the very top of the hierarchy, where they've gone, yes, this is a good thing, let's go and do that, looking at you, Bezos. But there's so many situations with this where it's like, oh, big, like, massive company has been doing something incredibly egregious, and it's come out and it's a really bad thing, and it's really invasion of privacy type stuff. And I just look at them and I go, this is way too mundane of a thing that the highest level of like the board kind of knew about it and was actually pushing it, saying, yes, do this. I'm more inclined to think that in most cases, this is some senior manager or department head or something like that who has allowed this kind of, a data scientist has come to them and said, hey, we can do this and it'll be really good. And they've allowed it to happen for the purposes of leveraging insights that will allow them to make a name for themselves at the company. And because they're only focused on them and their career and what they can get out of it, they don't mandate any safeguards be done. Because the thing is as well, if you do this kind of thing and you actually do that sort of stuff properly from a security perspective, you have to declare it to other people.
Yep.
And then, and now security knows what you're doing, and then they can look at it from a legal perspective and get general counsel in and go, you shouldn't be doing this. So I'm always inclined to think that it's less big corporate malfeasance and more just self-interested senior manager.
I'll see that, and I'll understand it there, Robin. But at the end of the day, the buck stops at the board.
Oh no, I know that.
So
I appreciate that, and but the flip side of that I always think about as well is there's only so far that can go. There's only so much the board can actually have done before it's a matter of, well, what else can you do when your people that you have, that you otherwise trust and that you have not seen any reason to distrust in the time that they have worked for you, are being willfully dishonest with you? Like, how are you supposed to sniff out bullshit if somebody is consistently lying?
Send them to jail. I mean,
yeah, but if you don't know that they're doing wrongdoing, anyway, we're getting to that.
If you don't know, then you don't belong to be on the board, man. Like, especially in an environment that's so attuned to this, like the EU. Let's say that. It's sad that I'm going to say this, but I could see this coming out of the United States, and I wouldn't blink an eye. Sadly, it's technically not illegal. So why wouldn't you? You'd be stupid not to gather all the data that you can get Mopes to agree to give you.
Mm-hmm.
In order to, I think you're pointing out a really great point there. I don't want it to be buried. Is this data, not necessarily for some cyberpunk, let's make sure we can control our population. They just want to be able to know where most of the cars are driven, where they can maybe target the sales to, all that beautiful stuff that's just, a 1990s marketer's wet dream that they could
Mhm.
only, was misty, like a crazy idea in their eye. Now they can do it. They can target, now instead of anecdotally 3 months later knowing that a bunch of Subarus sell in the Northeast during bad weather, we can tell you by the week, and based on snowfall, if it snows, we're going to sell 10 more. Let's run more ads or what have you.
Exactly. My point is fundamentally, it's all too easy, and it's kind of sexy and fun to imagine this is all some sort of big evil conspiracy, like a corporate conspiracy, when in actual fact, for the most part, it's a lack of transparency at within the corporate structure. It is self-interested actions of people who work in, say, middle and senior management and that sort of stuff. And it is, like you say, people trying to make the most of the information that they can get and not considering the ramifications, because it's worth too much to them personally to use it. And well, if it all gets out, kind of, oh, that's not really my problem. It's a case of the road to hell was paved with good intentions.
Sure, and it's important enough to gather, but apparently it's not important enough to safeguard. That's the rub that I have. This probably wouldn't have even gotten out if they weren't such shit at protecting their databases to begin with. As crazy as it seems.
But that goes back to my point around people doing things off the books,
siloed,
slightly clandestinely, and not declaring it to the powers that could secure that stuff, because then legal gets wind of it and saying, actually, you can't do that.
We shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Good call.
So anyway, moving. We went very deep in for this was a quick story sort of piece. Was that our 3 quick ones? Not so quick ones?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's good. And really piggybacking off of that, right, we're going full EU today.
Nice
EU
segue.
data, trying to keep it a little smoother. In the vein of making predictions or trying to prognosticate a little bit for 2025, cybersecurity trends to watch, especially given what's going to happen. 8 days, 9 days from today. Which it's how the EU handles information and cybersecurity is gonna be fun. Because I'm even hearing rumors of a purported conspiracy from Keir Starmer to interfere with the election. Listen, I just got that last night. I looked at it. I got a source check, but holy smokes. So putting that aside, because we don't want controversy, heavens no. There's 5 key trends here. First one being EU's Artificial Intelligence Act in action. I'm telling you, man, if I'm not going to get off the EU's jock for a long time, especially if they keep being so forward thinking with their regulations. They're one of the first bodies with any teeth to get in front of what the hell we're going to do from an AI perspective, governance wise.
Why don't you just get a hotel room with them?
Listen, if I love it so much, let me marry him, right? I'm showing my age there, but of course, right? And definitely not a hotel room with Pee Wee Herman, because he gets handsy. But you've seen this trend with just straight up GDPR, where that's the EU being very European with their thoughts on citizens actually deserve privacy rights. What's that going to amount to? And they've been fining the hell out of everybody. I don't think they fine them enough. I think some of the people that they're trying to find make too much goddamn money. So what can you do? You don't want to set the fines unlimited, because then it could get crazy and deep six and things. But at the very least, they have a pattern of writing laws, doing some guidance and governance, and then enforcing it. So I hope and pray that the same thing happens with the Artificial Intelligence Act, because as I said, outside of the UN talking a big game, or outside of NIST, which I love that fact that there's a risk management strategy from NIST about AI, but it's not mandatory. No. I mean, it's, please cross your heart and be a Boy Scout about it. This, hopefully, we'll see some enforcement of the AI Act from the EU. Coming up a quick second, Network and Information Security Directive, NIS2, matures a new era of cybersecurity regulation. NIS2 is, I consider it a big equivalent to like the NIST CSF on this side of the pond here. It's the maturity there. It's the same way you and I both lost our minds when CSF 2.0 came out. Same thing here in terms of tightening up certain directives. And again, with an eye towards more governance, they expanded. NIS2 did get a little deeper governance, gave more than a head nod towards AI as well, because for some reason, y'all Europeans actually like to, coordinate efforts, it seems, which is crazy. It's a crazy concept here because apparently every state has to do its own friggin' thing with data privacy. That's just
yeah. We can't lump me into that anymore because we don't play nice.
I know, but even then, it's still it's there's whiffs and vapors still that carry over, which have you guys in a better spot than any of what's going on in the great United States here.
I think there may be something to do with having sparked altogether across 2 different periods 10 years worth of global conflict, is to say maybe we should start working together a little bit more, because that wasn't pleasant.
Maybe, who knows, right? Like if we could have another referendum, God willing, but who knows. Number 3, evolution of data transfers, a unified framework. The EU-US data privacy framework will, of course, keep on facing ongoing reviews. But again, the big takeaway I want our listeners to come away from is that there's been some big lines drawn in the sand in that area of the world regarding data privacy, and at least having some sort of semblance of standardization. And they're going to try to enforce it. So this is big if you're a US-based company and you want to get your hands on sweet European markets. You're going to have to come correcter, that's not a word, but whatever, than you do with your local data in the good old US of A. Coming up as a 4th point here, or you have some thoughts there on point number 3, or?
I mean, somewhat. I think it's one of those things where I think the presence of the EU stuff, things like the data privacy framework, things like GDPR, which you're about to mention. I know I've absolutely no doubt there are people probably, well, actually most certainly in the EU, but definitely here as well, because in the States, land of the freedom, and we kind of, there's many people who think that's complete unfettered freedom, that you should be able to do absolutely anything that you want. It's like, well, no, I mean, only within the realms of, not once it starts affecting other people, then they're not free, then are they?
No, listen, you're impining on my freedom if I can't impine on their freedom. How dare you?
Exactly, and that's the stupid thing. So the fact that this kind of stuff, it's good that they have to follow this, because it does prevent them from having their, as entities, as companies, having their own complete unfettered freedom at the expense of everybody else who now doesn't have that same privilege.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, right, and again, sometimes you just need one governing body to gather up the gumption and light the way. Expanding consumer rights under GDPR's influence, member nations of the EU are going to start taking a look at how to kind of tweak and adjust for their own internal citizens' data protection. One of the big sticking points, which I'm excited is even being discussed, is a right to explaining algorithmic decision making, which is a neat way to say, tell me how the fuck AI came to the decisions that it came to about XYZ. And now that has far-reaching effects in terms of credit rating, in terms of insurance potentially, in terms of getting healthcare coverage. There's a whole list of use cases where we're going towards algorithmic decision making, and if it's murky, it's dangerous. but we don't have laws covering that in the United States. There's a theme
Mm.
here, Robin, and I'm getting heated thinking about it. Like, this is nuts. But
I mean,
thankfully,
and there's something, that kind of thing as well is, that's just sensible. You don't have, I think, start that one again. I think some of the secrecy around the algorithms and that sort of stuff, and I'm just going to start, I'm going to use primarily the social media and which content to push and which not to, etc., etc.
a very big topic.
I've always
lately.
feel like a lot of it is held back and not given the transparency that people would like, on the grounds of, oh, well, this is proprietary and we don't want anybody to know how to do it. And it's just kind of horseshit. There's so much more work that goes into that sort of stuff than simply just declaring, oh, well, we're going to push this, we're going to push this, we're not going to show things that have this. For instance, YouTube, because we're battling with this right now on the channel, where there's watermarks of any description, none of that content gets showed. And okay, yeah, that makes sense, and you can definitely understand it when somebody points it out to you. It becomes much more clear and apparent. But it's really stupid that this kind of stuff isn't simply just declared, oh, if you do this, if you do this, if you do this, if you do this, your content won't be as successful. Have the platform declare that, rather than rely on frigging content creators to. And maybe this is part of it, maybe there is some sort of like conspiracy around this, is to having, you know, corporate conspiracies to having, oh, well, we'll keep all this obfuscated and stuff like that, because then it creates a great big niche for a whole bunch of content creators to create more content about, here's why all of your videos aren't coming out. But like, why the fuck should I have to go either trawling through somebody else's videos or sitting there looking at the data myself to try and tease out what rules are and aren't in place based on what's performing well and what's not, and what are the commonalities between that kind of content? Just fucking tell me.
Well, here's my counter argument. Well, not arguing, but here's what's even scarier to me, at least, is that sometimes, Robin, they can't tell you. They literally
Because they don't
cannot,
know themselves.
because they don't know themselves, and that's where we're running into being out over our skis with this type of technology. I'm usually not doom and gloom. Technology is my business, and business is good. I love it. But when you can't deconstruct a decision process because it's black boxed within its own AI, and you hand wave it, that's an issue.
Well, you've got a team of 1,000 developers and data scientists who haven't actually documented what the fuck they've been doing.
Absolutely. And to your point in an earlier story, maybe there's some sectarianism based on self-interest there. Who knows?
I know. But it doesn't make, it's just stupid. Like it doesn't help anybody but the people creating that content, for example, and also the platforms themselves. Everybody else is just going like, well, I'm just sort of flapping around in the dark, trying to just using trial and error to try and figure out what the hell works.
And you're starting to see with a lot of AI algorithms and a lot of standards, a deep division between those that are open and those that aren't. And one of the things that is touted as a competitive advantage for those that are open is the fact that here, you can look under the hood. But however, even on top of those types of platforms, you can magic it to the point where you don't know what happened there. So this is that type of technology where, again, when you have so many question marks, it's really great to see someone taking the lead with governance, or at least trying to. So I'll close this out here with the Digital Markets Act meets GDPR, privacy in the platform economy as the fifth big hot button prediction for 2025. The Digital Markets Act, now coming into its own fully in 2025, is really going to, this plus net neutrality going sideways is going to be a fun thing to see the convergence and the confluence of, the overlap between DMA and GDPR enforcement. It's going to challenge platforms to adapt their practices while balancing privacy obligations. Suddenly, in a lawless game, there's rules, and if the history of the Wild West is any indication, there's going to be a period of even increased lawlessness before it gets better, if it does. Let's see. Take it away, Robin. What's your story?
I had a plethora. First few, so this is what I had to choose from. So Chinese hackers double cyber attacks on Taiwan.
Shocker.
Obviously, they want the territory. Big semiconductors. They contest that it is already and always has been theirs anyway.
One China.
The Taiwanese would fiercely disagree. Now we recall attacks against Ukraine from Russia ticked up quite a lot prior to the invasion. So I'm not making any predictions here, but I will have a surprise Pikachu face if we see the unfortunate play out of Chinese incursion into Taiwan in the next year or two. Absolutely don't want it, but will not be surprised.
Oh yeah.
Similarly, and I think this goes to the perceived scale of threat as well. The US are treating web and gaming giant Tencent, which is a Chinese company, with the same levels of caution, and we're not going to allow you to screw around in our borders the way that you are, as they did with TikTok, or are doing so with TikTok. The other ones, this is one that was I figured was absolutely ridiculous. From Bleeping Computer, Casio says that data of 8,500 people exposed in October ransomware attack. Number one, who cares? Number two, who is giving their data to Casio? Just buy the damn watch.
Listen.
And like buy the $10 watch, wear it for 15 years until it eventually runs out of battery, and that's it. Don't give them your personal data. You've no need to. This is ridiculous. Like I don't even know why this was news. Like, okay, yeah, unfortunate for the people whose data was exposed, but I mean, to be fair, it actually involves business partner data and employee data. So there is kind of that, but there is some customer personal data that was in there. Like who, like I stress again, who the hell is giving their personal data as a customer of Casio? Who the hell is giving their personal data to Casio?
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense.
That's all.
But the one that I really want to go to is from Information Security Magazine. Phishing click rates triple in 2024.
Oh.
Not good. It's not good. And it's not good because phishing being the number one way that people get got, and it is the number one way that people get got because it's so effective. It will pretty much always be on the top of the list. To your point and persistent references to supply chain attacks, why focus all of those efforts on one very hard nut to crack when you can go after many small nuts who have access to the bigger nut, right?
After the reference to timber at the top of the call, I don't understand like where we went on this call, but I'm here for it. Timber and nuts.
Squirrels would be having a field day.
But I like that we're inclusive of big nuts and small nuts, right? We're not nut snobs.
No. Why? There was just no need. It was so innocent, and you just went.
No, come on now.
Anyway.
Big nuts.
Look, so this
can't not go in there. It's an American. Come on.
Moving on. Well, not moving on. Just back to the story. So this is according to research from a cloud security services provider called Netscope. More than 8 out of every 1,000 users clicked on a phishing link each month in 2024. So okay, yeah, it's 0.8%, but that's when you're talking about the world population, or at least the population that has access to the internet. It's a hell of a lot. There's billions of people, but that's up 190% compared to the prior year. Now, there's been an interesting kind of shift in how all of that has happened, in that most targeted or most impersonated are cloud service providers. So we're kind of talking in the realms of like OneDrive, for example, Microsoft's OneDrive, Office 365 page, login page, for example, most spoofed login page in the world at the moment. Why? Because it's so common. People are so familiar with it, and they don't necessarily. I would hazard most people couldn't tell me exactly, unless they've got some Rain Man level abilities, couldn't tell me exactly what it looks like. They just know roughly what it should look like, and that's how they kind of get got. This also plays into the fact that actually where these phishing links are getting to people has been shifting. Right? So it's been moving from email, which has traditionally been the delivery method, and now there are nearly 20% of them are actually web-based links off search results. And actually, this is highlighted in there's a different article on the same site talking about a PhishWP plugin, a WordPress plugin that is designed to mimic legitimate payment processors on WordPress pages, and so to collect one-time passwords and bypass multi-factor security measures, and also skim off payment details. But the way that this is being done is that you've got attackers finding vulnerable pages on, and again, cloud platforms like WordPress, which is a web page hosting platform, finding vulnerable accounts there, inserting these malicious plugins unbeknownst to the site owner, and then having this payment processor login page, or what looks like it at least, and people put in their login details, they trigger a one-time passcode, but when they put in that one-time passcode, it goes immediately to the attacker's to a Telegram account, so that they can then use that to log in. It's absolutely wild, but that's the nub of where it is. This phishing activity is moving from email, where people have been, like, by people like myself and you, warned for years and years and years, be careful of what email you're receiving, so people get very, very vigilant about that, or at least more so than they were. There's still people who are not vigilant at all, but people get more cautious about it, and so the attack method, the attack vector, changes to exploit a cognitive blind spot somewhere where people are less careful, which is on their search results. And I can understand completely why and how this is happening from the perspective of, we talked about it last week with email-based phishing, and it was hard to spot, but there's various clues that you can go through, the thing like the actual sender address, the spelling, punctuation, and grammar, etc. I think when you're on the web, it starts becoming much more, it's less, let's target these people with this thing that might interest them, and it ends up being a little bit more of a watering hole scenario. So you can't rely on that, is it unsolicited, because you're actually searching for the information yourself anyway. You're searching for the service yourself, so you kind of have a little bit more reason to trust it, because you've got vested interest in navigating through to those links and using the functionality that's on those sites. So there's less to spot. I think this is going to be much more of a problem, and I think the onus really then falls back to the platform providers and the site owners to make sure that their shit is locked down. Otherwise, you're going to be opening up an awful lot more people to a lot of cyber risk. And that's my piece on there. Unfortunately, I don't have any sage advice.
No, it's a shift that's going to take, I think, some re-education, right? Because it's shifting to another arena, and it's sadly, for nefarious purposes, it's following those two beautiful tenets of how to get people to adopt technology. Is it easy? And does it do a job that they're looking to be done? Does it help them do something that they're looking to do? It hits those two immediately, especially on a search. They're looking for that info. So, yeah, sure.
I think I think the big piece of advice that, at least for you common person, is gonna have to start to be, no matter what it is you are doing online and no matter how much of a rush you are in, slow down.
Yeah.
Really look at stuff.
Yeah.
And
Dude,
consider whether it is worth it, and layer in other aspects of how to protect yourself. We've talked about the credit card versus debit card thing before. We've talked about different passwords for different stuff, for example. That kind of thing is going to be all the more relevant, useful, and necessary if you are increasingly unable to spot the attack before you're actually in the process of falling for it.
Sure.
Right. We do not have anything feature-wise on the docket for next week, so we will simply be back with just the news and more verbal trip overs from me that I end up not cutting out and editing because I can't be bothered.
They're endearing.
Some of them do end up just being a little bit too much, and actually, I think there's times when I will look through back on the editing, and I'll hear some words that I'll look at and I'll go, I'm sure I said that the proper way, but it's like an E ends up being an A, and it's like that's not actually a word. It's very odd. It's weird. Anyway, enough of my rambling. We'll see you again next week. And till then, stay cyber safe.
Adios.